Welcome, everyone. Come on into the room. Feel free to get settled. We'll get started in just a minute. We'd love to hear from you, where you're at, your name, your affiliation, where you're calling in from. And then we'd also love to hear your answers to this prompt question, because we're very curious about the spaces you come from, the communities of practice that you're a part of, and where you hope to bring learnings from this session back to as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. I just want to say thank you all so much for joining us here today for the first session of our Beloved Economies Learning and Practice Intensive. Beloved Economies is the culmination of a 7-year collaborative research initiative, narrative campaign, and movement ecosystem that has been fueled by an incredible collective of organizations and individuals, many of whom you will have an opportunity to hear from today. This initiative explores how transforming the ways that we work helps us achieve a different economy than the one that we have, a truly beloved economy. I'm Sonia Sarkar. It's great to be here with all of you today. I'm a member of the Beloved Economies campaign team. My pronouns are she, her, and for over 18 years, I have worked at the intersection of well-being, community power, and thriving communities. Beloved Economies is really meaningful to me because it represents a philosophy in which our workspaces and our work relationships can actually encapsulate healing rather than extraction. So we're really thrilled to be here in community with so many of you today. We know that you represent really diverse corners of our economies, from small businesses to nonprofit organizations to funders and trade networks and various community ecosystems. So we're really excited to have the opportunity to share insights and perspectives from our incredible partners that have contributed to the co-creation of the Beloved Economies book, campaign, and movement. And that will really be the focus of the first half of our time together, is hearing from them around their learnings and their insights from all of the different places and spaces that they come from. We'll then transition after a break into the second half of our time together, which will really focus on interactive learning and practice with one another. So a chance for all of you to really interact with the others on this call, as well as interact with our practitioners and dive into some of the questions you have, some of the spaces that you see for bringing some of these learnings back to any of the different environments that you're coming from. So before we dive in, I'd love to hand it to my colleague, Dino Fox, who is one of our honored movement partners at Beloved Economies, as we work to sunset the campaign and the collaboration that's been taking place over the past few years and ensure that our research and findings can really be seeded in and then fuel other transformational work that's happening across the sector. So I'll pass it to you, Dino.
Thank you so much, Sonia. My name is Dino Fox. My pronouns are they, them. I'm the Director of Imagination and Culture for Justice Funders. And today I have the honor of supporting behind the scenes. In the spirit of practice, we ask for your graciousness if we have tech challenges. We've already had one, so we've got it out of the way. The chat wasn't turned on. We got through that, but we are going to be working together as a new team on day one of the intensive. So hopefully we will be entertaining and we'll be able to help move through any technical challenges smoothly and quickly. But I'm certain with over 170 of you here, we will surely learn a lot. The Beloved Economies Project originally began on the unceded territory of the Ohlone people, and today our facilitation team is calling in from the land of the Piscataway, Umanos, Lipan Apache, and Tonkawa people. Join us in acknowledging the original communities of the land you are on, their elders, past and present, and future generations, by placing them in the chat. We will also drop a link here. If you are unfamiliar with the Indigenous territory you are on, here is a link for you to be able to do that research.
We're now going to hear just a bit about the research that underpins today's learning and practice intensive session from Jess Remington and Joanna Saya. Jess and Joanna are the co-authors of the 2022 book, Beloved Economies, Transforming How We Work, which is the winner of 2 book awards in its first year, including the 2022 Porchlight Business Book of the Year in Management and Workplace Culture. The book is informed by the results of this 7-year collaborative research initiative, which Jess and Joanna launched in 2015 as visiting scholars at Stanford University. And the findings that emerged from this research revealed a powerful lever of change for transforming our economy toward one that truly works for all. In 2020, Jess and Joanna launched a nonprofit campaign, the Beloved Economies campaign, to deepen the research and strategically share calls to action related to the findings. A time-bound initiative that's involved over 30 collaborators, the Beloved Economies campaign is culminating this fall. Our campaign team is honored to be collaborating in this final year with 12 national organizations at the forefront of advancing economic transformation towards futures of shared power and well-being. And this intensive is an important part of the campaign's culmination and what we're calling supernova, which is how we're describing our intent for the campaign to seed and reinforce an array of workplace transformation efforts moving forward. The name of the book and campaign, Beloved Economies, is a frame that was gifted to this effort by Dr. Virgil A. Wood, who is a pastor, an educator, and an advocate for economic justice and transformation for more than 7 decades. Dr. Wood was a collaborator on the research, and we will have the honor of hearing from him in an upcoming session as well. So with that, I'd love to welcome Jess and Joanna.
Thank you, Sonia. The Beloved Economies research found that there is a powerful link between a particular way of work and a particular form of success. And it happens that this way of work is rooted in sharing power and produces a form of success we came to term breakout innovation. Breakout innovation is a specific type of innovation that's high quality and unique, and that those achieving it experience 3 things. 1, they create designs like services, products, or programs that powerfully are aligned with the needs and possibilities of the system they are addressing. 2, they deliver solutions that make a rapid leap from concept to actually being implemented in the real world and subsequently have wide uptake. And 3, and I think this is the one I'm particularly interested in, they generate a shift in power dynamics that activate more innovators within the system. Often that system being a workplace, which then permanently changes the dynamics so that a far greater number of actors are then playing creative leadership roles. So in other words, there are more staff or team members who see themselves and are skilled at being innovators, which then positively affects the future of the work of that team. So while learning alongside 60 organizations, groups, and companies achieving this kind of breakout innovation for nearly a decade, we found that there are 7 practices underpinning their successful way of work. And we'll be exploring these 7 practices together today in depth, and you'll get to hear directly from some of those involved in those groups and organizations. But first, we just want to share a bit more about the research as a primer. I said before that this way of work is connected to sharing power. And that's because we came to find that the heart of why these groups are successful is the fact that they are unleashing a certain type of power and how they work. It's a kind of power that actually the status quo of work, of business as usual, is incentivized to disconnect us from. We came to call this power our rights to design. Rights to design are what we exercise when we make decisions together and how we imagine, decide, and build things or processes, when we hold the designer's pen in our hand and essentially sketch the future through our decisions at work. Exercising these can look like shaping how an enterprise's profits are used and by whom, or it could be as simple as having the flexibility to create our own schedule and work hours. The thing is that in business as usual, one's ability to express these rights to design tends to be closely tied to how much financial capital one wields or is connected to. And we've just kind of come to accept that work, specifically business as usual work, is one in which most organizations, companies, and systems function, which is this really small group of people making the most pivotal decisions on how things are run or designed, setting the constraints, creating the rules. So in the current economy, rights to design are consolidated right alongside the consolidation of wealth. The greater the connection to wealth, the greater the ability to influence and essentially shape reality. These 2 things going together is so pervasive in our current system that we can fall into assuming it's just the way things are or the way things have to be. But what we observed in the research is that companies, organizations, and groups that disrupted this dynamic, A dynamic which, if you really think about it, is so limiting, because if we're only listening to and designing with a small percentage of our collective ingenuity, then we're only tapping into a fraction of the brilliance we hold for what else could be possible. And that's actually why the organizations we tracked, why their ways of worked so well, because instead they were broadly distributing the rights to design. They were working in ways that enabled everyone to hold the designer's pen. And so they got much smarter, more visionary, and more effective insight. And that's what underpins the success of the 7 practices, and why we say that all of them are about sharing power. And that's also why we think you should care about this research and this work, because not only does it lift up ways of working that we've seen be wildly impacting and lead to breakout innovation across many, many organizations and groups, but also because this way of work begins to heal something that is unwell about our current ways of working, about business as usual. And we're at a moment in time when it's so clear how unwell so many of our systems are. If there's something we can each do about that, something that we can each do in our everyday jobs, independent of the type of work we're in, we feel that's immensely worth exploring. Passing to you, Joanna.
Thank you very much, Jess. And thank you, Sonia and Dino. And thank you to each of you for being with us today. We're really excited. So as Sonia mentioned, this endeavor began back in 2015 with what at the time Jess and I thought was going to be a targeted 6-month research project. But what unfolded became a 7-year, multifaceted, and very collaborative research process. At the heart of the research process was a co-learning community composed of 60 people from a wide array of enterprises. And what all of these groups had in common is that they are generating breakout innovation and forms of success that really boldly prioritize well-being, meaning, connection, resilience, and they're managing to also still be successful in business as usual terms also. So we were really curious what was happening. With this co-learning community, plus a research team, advisors, narrative testers, and more, ultimately 130 people contributed to this research, not just in surfacing information, but in shaping the analysis that emerged. We encourage all of you to learn more about the research process and the amazing people involved in our book. And quite a number of those people are with us today. You'll get to hear from and engage with 8 members of the co-learning community. And you might also meet folks in your small groups who contributed to the research. So in this research altogether, the finding that really surprised us was something that became clear in the final year. At that point, we had longitudinal data following the 60 groups in our co-learning community, many of them for over 6 years, and all of them at that point during multiple years of a pandemic. And that surprise was the finding that inspired this learning and practice intensive, and it's this. Over time, our research found that when teams, companies, and groups work in ways aligned with the 7 practices, and they achieve breakout forms of success, doing so creates ripple effects. It can shift norms within a whole sector. It can spark change among businesses and organizations across an entire geographic area. And it can even raise the bar for what can get on the table and be considered for policy. Once we saw this, we started to tune into a vast amount of academic research affirming exactly the same thing. Innovation in how we structure and relate in our workplaces fuels broader shifts in our economy and society. As summed up by sociology scholars Dr. Catherine K. Chen and Victor Tan Chen in their 2021 edited volume, Organizational Imaginaries, a key insight of the sociology of organizations is that through their goals and practices, organizations fundamentally shape people's lives. Most organizational practices underserve particular groups and justify an inequitable distribution of resources. Some organizational practices even repress and harm members, clients, and workers. If communities desire better futures, They need to create transformative organizations that make those futures possible. In sum, transforming how we work in our groups can be a powerful lever for economic change. Passing to you, Jess.
Thanks, Joanna. There's a ton of phenomenal research about this ripple effect, and much of it has been around for years. But unfortunately, a lot of it doesn't make the leap from the academic shelves into how we're taught in the mainstream about the best ways to work and even what work means and what it can be. And that gets us to our call of action for this intensive. We feel the time is now to change how we work. We know from our research and from being workers ourselves that the way we work currently isn't working. There's a staggering litany of statistics revealing the physical and psychological strains of the workplace that are costing us our well-being and leaving most of us financially strapped. We're emerging from a time when we saw so much of this compound and when we simultaneously experienced a widespread questioning of work norms. And we experienced adaptation and change in response to the pandemic around those work norms. We all witness that the rules of how we work can be rewritten en masse when they need to. The Beloved Economies research in this intensive is for anyone looking or longing for ways of work that regenerate and heal our economies, who want to utilize this moment of questioning the workplace to pull open an escape hatch with us and guide yourselves and your teams toward a more beloved way of working. It's for anyone who's fed up and has the will and latitude to make a change.
Thank you so much for joining us for this Learning and Practice Intensive with our Beloved Economies collaborators. Today, session 1 is all about this call to action. And our focus today is on the 7 practices illuminated by the research, which are a hallmark of teams successfully breaking out of business as usual into forms of work that are life-affirming, purposeful, high impact, and high joy. And as promised, we're going to learn and we're going to practice as much as is possible within the confines of a Zoom event. And we hope that today we're also going to seed a whole bunch of new communities of practice with which you just might be inspired to continue learning and practicing as a sustaining force in your journey of reimagination and repair. Because you may need that support, because transforming how we work is not easy. We don't want to make it sound like it is. It's complicated, it can be messy, even painful, and it's very unique to each entity's own journey and aims. But it's worth it. That is something that came through loud and clear over these past 7 years from every person and group who's been a part of the Beloved Economies co-learning community. And now today, we're growing that community with you. And we're so honored and excited that you are here with us.